Welcome to the More Business, More Life podcast. And today I have a really special guest for me. And his name is Mason Taylor with Superfeast. And the reason I say it's really special to me is because his products and his company have been in my life for over a decade. And you're going to see why when we jump into this. But we're going to also cover his life, how he started his business, how he's been able to stick to his roots, and why he started this business, even in the growth, to amplify what is traditionally a small concept, right, structure, but yet being able to amplify that and grow that without losing his core identity. And that's tricky for all of us business owners. So we're going to dive into that and much more. So let's listen in now. Well, welcome to the show, Mason.
Thank you very much. Big honor.
Yeah, it's been a journey, and we'll get into that. We've known each other a long time, and I know we've been talking about doing this for quite some time. I think it's just amazing watching how far you've come in the decade I've known you. And I think that's the biggest highlight to kind of start off with. You've stuck to your roots. Like when I met you, I just remember your heart being in health and wanting to share the herbs and the plants that bring medicine to our bodies. And as you've grown, really, I mean, and now you have quite a big organization, and you're expanding internationally, so now you're an international business, and yet you're staying core, which is not the easiest thing to do. But I just want to congratulate you and be able to stay to your core while expanding and amplifying this goodness to the world is amazing what you've done, Mason.
Thank you. Yes, I've gone through many existential crises in the meantime.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure that's where I want to cover because, being this show, More Business, More Life, we want to talk about that business. But the reason that I wanted to have you on this show is because you do bring the life aspect in a really big way. I mean, we all have, I often say more business, more life is not necessarily balance. A lot of people want to call it life balance, but there are moments where we're going to work more and there are times we're going to work less. And so it's not like a daily balance achievement where it's exactly the same, but it's bringing whole life into perspective. And I think you have a good position on that. So I guess, that might be a great place. But before we do that, just maybe share your business. So you are, basically a Taoist herbalist bringing these herbs to the planet. Maybe share just briefly what that means to you.
Yeah, before we dive later into all the sometimes esoteric and more slippery aspects of business and the organizational philosophy and approach, I think you're right. It's nice to just settle on the what we do, the actual thing that goes out of our doors. And that is, as you said, Taoist herbal medicine. And a part of that is a lot of those herbs people know as adaptogenic herbs, and then also the medicinal mushrooms. Some of you might know them as functional mushrooms, non-psychedelic ones. And it's based off, I was quite smitten when I was studying Taoism, not just the philosophy of cultivation of self and health, and also the cultivation of health in an understanding at a bit more of a macro spiritual level, what that was serving, not just longevity for the sake of longevity. I got really swept off my feet, I'd say, in the back of a university lecture. I was like bored out of my mind reading books on the Tao. But the books I happened to read were also focused on the herbs, the mushrooms, and the practice around herbalism, what we call the superior herbs or the tonic herbs that service that journey of refining our body and our energy and our spirit, so that it's nice and healthy, so that we're rad when we're old and not crumpled old non-integrated assholes that project all of our fears and our opinions onto everybody else because we can't think for ourselves. So when I saw that there were herbs that could be used long term for longevity, energy, all the things that are the canary in the coal mines for health demising, like sex drive, like bone health, all these beautiful hormonal nervous system regulation capacity for the immune system to not just be strong, but to be able to regulate itself. I was like, right, that seems like an um, incredible arm of herbalism. It goes back to the original herbal classic text of Shen Nong, describing these herbs over 2,000 years ago and how to work with them long term, like these mushrooms, roots, berries, this type of herbal medicine, the superior herbal medicine, using them long term, integrating them into the diet, sometimes having a lot, sometimes having a little, sometimes finding your constitutional weakness of maybe yang or yin and taking herbs that help you supplement that, and other times having a pause altogether. But it's a long term, over a lifetime practice of integrating herbs, but powerful, really powerful herbs. And so that's what I do. I have made a connection about 10 years ago with a partner in China who was also interested in restoring not just Taoist tonic herbalism, but a way of either foraging for them in a way that leaves the foraging industry intergenerational, so not depleting the environment, but also using a style of farming called or sourcing called DDAO. That is essentially, there's lots of things we can talk about. Like it's highly rural, in only independent farmers, not farmers owned by a business. Only spring water or well water or rainwater, away from industry, scrutinized and tested for metals and pesticides and all of that stuff. But what it is it's growing them in a way which might mean, that it's high mountain or really low valley or a place where there's lots of frost or a place where there's like extreme heat. So the herbs are being and the mushrooms and everything are growing under extreme and appropriate stress, that the qualities when you extract them traditionally, it's the same qualities that they were talking about 2,000 years ago in this text. And that is very important because it's not just one marketable aspect or something which can market to I'm not saying this in a judgmental way, but maybe the desperate part of the market that is just making purchases out of fear. It's not about positioning a mushroom like reishi mushroom or Sustanche, or Schizandra, or Astragalus, or lion's mane in a way that is going to be really easily just like, oh, that is what is it? What's in marketing? The problem solution.
Yeah.
But there are these mysterious qualities that were documented, like in this original text and has been passed down about these are the herbs that can help protect the treasure of the body, known as Jing Qi Shen, or body energy, spirit mind, and can work to protect the treasure over the long term and help you to cultivate that treasure long term. And that's why these are called superior herbs. And they're only superior if they're harvested in a particular way, sourced in a particular place. If the mushroom itself, if the spore that is seeding the crop, reishi is one of the ones that are cultivated in the Darby Mountains, really nice and high, all spring water fed, it's magical. But the spore that the reishi comes from, it can't be more than, I think it's 2 cycles reishi, maybe it's 3 for reishi. Sometimes like this is like a lot of herbs I work with, of growth. The spores need to come from a wild source of the mushroom. So you can't use a commercial or domesticated spore. Likewise with all the other, with whether it's the ginsengs or the astragaluses, that's the same. So that's a practice in the Tao, Taoist herbalism, in the way that the herbs are grown by the farmers in the villages and the way that we source it and create relationships, not just with farmers, but with villagers to, if they're in an area where it's able to de-Dao grow, say, dongguai, and we're willing to restore and be able to source more and more dongguai while localizing jobs and restoring a tradition, a very hard asset when we're going into a world of cloud and AI and automation. A hard a hard job is this type of farming and restoring this farming in rural areas, but coming from a philosophy, not something that's like scalable, something that only a real, like a human can really carry the torch of a lineage. And so that was kind of audaciously over 10 years ago. That's the style of herbalism. Well, over 16 years ago now, I got into it and did it myself, and it's been over 10 years now that I've been, bringing it through the markets, people just asking me, "Can you bring this reishi? You talk about it all the time." And I'm like, "All right, I'll start bringing reishi." And then it grew, and then I started creating my own formulas, like the Jing formula with just, 6 balanced Jing herbs for the kidney adrenals, that foundational body treasure, qi herbs, shen herbs, mushroom, like multi kind of like formulas and women formulas, so on and so forth. And there's more and more and more to come. And audaciously, I tried to keep that tradition at the core of what we did. That falls a lot into my business philosophy, which I guess we'll get into later, and why I've done that. It's been very difficult. At one point, it was like impossible to scale, and then we held on long enough. And when everyone else went for like more generic organic sources, we were able to stick with was stuck with my partner, who's still my partner over there, and together, maybe there's only like a couple of other companies in the world that are really doing it. We've been able to to educate and teach people about this style of growing, that we've been able to then attract enough young people to remain in villages and continue this farming style, that now the we're able to we're able to take the glass ceiling off the supply issue that we were looking at like quite a few years ago, and now we're getting really good momentum. A lot of
So
mushroom.
that's like so, and even right now, I have my cup here, and I a lot of times typically have cacao with your mushrooms, and I put it in and have that all together, which is what I'm drinking while we're talking. But Jonas, who is a cacao, he had similar thing, and now he works with over 1,000 farms, so that he is doing it in this way, this good way, with because if you want to grow, then you tend like what you're talking about, there's choices. You can like commercialize and take away all that good spirit that's done in that very traditional way and go mass market, and then but it's not the same in the cup anymore. You can feel it's like kind of grandma's cooking, like, you always hear that, like, "I have grandma's exact recipe, why does it not taste the same?" It's all that love and spirit that's put into it from the human work that you're talking about, and so what I'm hearing, so it's the same way, so the reason I brought that up is you're finding more farmers, encouraging other younger farmers to come online so that you could actually have more capacity and supply, while not diminishing your core. Uh, and I want to also take a moment because I know we went really far really fast, which is great because now people are kind of like catching up to where we are. I just want to express my gratitude before we get too far into this because you've been a part of my life for over a decade since I met you. Um, and I know when I was paralyzed, many people listening, they know that I went through Guillain-Barré syndrome. Even the neurologist is saying, "Whatever you did before you got this is helping you now." And you were already a part of my life, and it became even more, like you said, when you were sharing about this, sometimes you take more. So during that period when I knew my nervous system was affected, then obviously lion's mane was a clear choice to add more, and I did, and, from all the people that I talked to that had the severity of how paralyzed I was able to heal much quicker than other people. Now, I'm not saying that it's exactly this thing, but even if it's in my mind, I mean, I'm happy to have your product in my life. If it was the placebo, I don't care because it did make me feel better and also a rush. Like I was able to start walking with a walker and move to a cane within like 4 months. And I met another cyclist that was also athletic because some people are saying, "Oh, you're athletic. That's the difference." But I met another very athletic person. He was a big cyclist doing like, huge races, like 50, 100-mile races on a bicycle. And he took 8 years, like from where he was. And, the only difference I could find is two things: my mindset, which I had done a lot of training in that. And then the second part was my, I did not do the pharmaceutical approach. They wanted and it was crazy stuff, not to I'm not trying to make a side thing like this side or that side, but I mean, when they started telling me I had to take ulcer medicine, I'm like, "I don't have ulcers." And they're like, "Yeah, but you just you take all this stuff." And that's what made me go, "Wait a minute, I don't have that. Like, why would I take that?" And so then I just chose to go this path, and then I just never looked back. It wasn't like needed to do any other way. But I just want to express my deep gratitude. The reason I went right into that story, and it's to this point, you care. I mean, and it's so much like I remember sitting with my cup in a wheelchair and just letting the sun come on my face. And I knew, and I, cause I know you, you were in my, I'm like, I know how much you care. Like just what you just said, you chose not to grow at whatever pace to just sell more product. You did it without losing the integrity of the spirit of what you do. And I could feel that like grandma's cooking. It was in my cup and you were with me during my healing, brother. And so I just want to say thank you because that's a challenge as a business person to like, how do you grow and do this? You know? So I guess how did you stay the core? Coming to a question, how do you stay that course when you're trying to pay all your employees and keep a business going and stay true, you know?
Yeah, I mean, your story is so incredible. You hit, and I will thank you. I'll go, I'm gonna jump in, but like you've nailed the time to start the. You know, we met doing some pretty deep introspection with a roommate. So I saw the places you went and the types of insights you were willing to, you know, the challenges internally you were willing to face, and then the realities of your life or like epiphanies of your life, and then you went and acted on them. So the time to do that was like then. Likewise, the time to you know, maybe purge your body of some like potential stagnation or toxicity is now before you get sick. And that time to start, say, tonic herbalism with like, you know, and these are herbs which are supporting us to create harmony in the body. And harmony isn't fluffy. Harmony is badass and you know, ready to go. Like a body, I kind of I say this very crassly, and we can just cut it a bit. Like when you're in harmony, your body is ready to fuck. Like, and that means that if you get hit by some extreme change, maybe you initiate the change in your business or where you're living, or if you get hit by a disease state or a degeneration, or if something, if you get caught in an accident, something happens to someone you love, we know that these changes are coming. And in terms of how I stayed the course, one of the core I did it for practical reasons, not altruistic ones. And I just really want to be clear on that. And the way that I approach business, I can't, I don't know whether it's the fact that I've got, you know, just my lack of focus, whether I have Peter Pan syndrome, whether it's just because I like working with an invisible muse and that's the only way that I can derive value, or if it's just because if I do business in a better way that grows the company, I'm going to get bored. Therefore, that's not the way for me. So I'm just going to, but when I go, as I go on, I just want to make sure that that's clear. And that's why it was very practical. So, like the KPIs for Superfeast long term derived from the essence of Superfeast and derive with from its ultimate partner, which is Taoist tonic herbalism and Taoist philosophy. There are 5, but one of those is the resilience and adaptability markers that support change, and then the capacity to land or derive wisdom from a time of challenge or change. Like, so that's an actual way that I can continue to like sense whether I'm like going in the right direction. And likewise, I have KPIs, of course, around keeping profit in a sweet spot, GP in a sweet spot, you know, like so on and so forth, making sure my balance sheet is going in the right direction with assets and liabilities. So it's like, it's practical to me. And in 10 years' time, you know, my KPIs around resilience markers with the Superfeast community who are taking these mushrooms and these tonics long term, they're taking enough. They're, you know, sometimes getting their bodies saturated, sometimes taking their foot off the gas, and associating all of that year of taking herbs and the lifestyle changes that they've made and seeing the difference of where they were and where they are now. And as you were talking about, you know, before, you don't know whether these mushrooms were doing like the healing or whatever, because they're not. They can only work on the body and the energy, the chi, the metabolism, and then the mind and the spirit. They can only support those, and it's only the body and only your internal energy, metabolic energy, kinetic energy, your chi, and it's only your mind and your spirit that can actually do any healing where it's relevant. We don't even know what healing is, why it happens sometimes, why it doesn't, to people who are seemingly like able to control their mind perfectly. We don't know whether it's karmic forces, reality, no matter what, but it's only your body that's going to be able to do it and your mind that's going to be able to do it. You can get some heavy support from the biggest badasses in the herbal kingdom and within herbal medicine, not those that are just kept within clinical application, but within lifestyle application that are decentralized. They're not owned by the practitioner. These are herbs that give you feedback. They strengthen your organs along with you, your body doing it itself. They restore harmony through the organ systems. They can restore harmony through the nervous system and endocrine system regulation, through the immune regulation. There's a lot of shit being thrown at us in this world. There is a lot of evolution that we are trying to do in these lifetimes. And having herbal substances and medicinal mushrooms, those types of tonics coming in, and as you know, you felt secure, and they're good friends, but the best thing you did was you started doing all of those things before you got sick. The time wouldn't have been necessarily, although a lot of people do this, like the level of conviction that you had in yourself was present because you had got a run up. And that's something I'm always curious when I'm talking to you about this, is just like, you know, that moment of choosing to be like, I just don't think I'm going to take that drug or this drug. And I think we both know that sometimes taking a drug is something that's like a beautiful gift and something you do and sometimes not. But your capacity to go ahead and choose the gift you gave yourself versus if you hadn't started purging your mind, refining your organ systems, getting your immune system rocking, getting your gut rocking through the lion's mane. Like, it's a strengthening tonic, the lion's mane, of the spleen and stomach chi. So that's a digestive strengthener and a nourisher of the microbiota. So you had that. So naturally, anyone who goes and does a wide array of data analysis on people who heal or have a hastier healing process, or can survive a healing process without as much drugs or surgery, which I think is it's a beautiful goal to not have that level of intervention if possible. I think that's something that I think even the medical, the hardcore allopathic medical community would agree on, is naturally, you're going to see a higher amount of people who are already engaged in these types of herbs, exercise, the kind of lifestyle that was like minimizing, say, like glyphosates from being in the system. You're going to see correlations. You're not going to be able to say, oh, you healed because you were on mushrooms. Of course not. Correlation isn't causation, but my God, it didn't bloody hurt. And because you'd started that, you had an association of your body upgrading and doing some cool things and coming into harmony. So it wasn't as much of a big, like, Hail Mary. You're sitting in the hospital, which I've talked to a lot of people who have done this. Um, they're like, I had no idea. I didn't know whether I could trust my body. I didn't know if I could trust the doctor. I had my friend who was an annoying, like too far, like against the system kind of health person who was just there telling me they're going to kill you and dangerous, and then they just have to make a Hail Mary decision that isn't coming from any inner navigation or practical grasping of what their body can and can't do. You started beforehand. Now is the time to start, because big shifts and changes are coming, whether they're local to you or in the world. You have to have resilience markers and awareness of your mind, and you have to have rocking healthy organs and immunity and an endocrine system that is like ready to fuck, as I said, if you are going to really dance through those changes, or at least stumble your way and land on the other side and be able to derive some
Yeah.
wisdom and knowledge.
It's, yeah, and as you're speaking, I remember the moment that maybe triggered me to want to be motivated in this, and it's through growing my family. As you always talked about, you were always impressed about me, and my, how I wanted to show up as a father. And I don't remember if I told you this, maybe I did. It was so long ago, but we lost 4 pregnancies. And so in my 20s, I had started building, as you know, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and I was having success. So I bought acreage um, in the country, and they were spraying all around my house. And I didn't think about it when I bought the house. I was like, oh, this is success. I get to have like some land, and, this is the dream. And I didn't realize. And again, this could be the thing. Maybe it's my body, because there were people on the same street as me having kids. And that was also noted. Texas A&M and M and Duke University here in the States were doing testing, and the specific loss of pregnancies that we had, 90 percentile of those were in rural areas around these specific pesticides. So there is data out there. You have to really, really dig. They're hard to find. They've been like, brushed aside. But that we were our doctor actually showed us those studies. And then again, this is my own experience. So everyone can take it for how they want. You can do your own research. But we moved out of that house and we were told to stop trying to have children. So we had our son. We moved in that house. And shortly after that, our son was born. Then we lived in that house. We were drinking well water there. We're in that consuming all of those. Now we know like all those herbicides, pesticides. We moved out of that house and we had our 2 baby girls. Healthy as can be, no problems with the pregnancies, like nothing. It was like perfect. Like they just came, natural birth, everything was beautiful. But it was getting out of that environment. So that caused me to be this awareness because I was trying to think as you're saying that. It wasn't just me like, oh, I met Mason, let me try these mushrooms. I remember sitting and you reminded me that, we were bunkmates. So we were on a retreat in the Amazon and we're there and we were sharing a hut, and basically I remember sitting on the porch and you amazed me because I was talking about being poisoned. I think maybe I might have told you some of the story. I don't remember, but I
Mm,
do remember a big thing that you made a huge impression on me. You said, Steve, no matter how healthy you eat, because I was talking about eating organic, because I found that that did help. Like if I got the poisons out of my body, because once I got a clue of this, it took me like 10 years to change my diet, but I made myself healthier. We had our baby girls, like we were on this health direction and watching what we were putting in our body. And you said this to me. You said, Steve, that's great. You can put all this goodness in your body, but you still have to detoxify. It does not matter how many good things you put in your body. You're naturally going to have stuff come into your being. Like you're gonna breathe air that's not the best. You're gonna drink water that's not the best. Like stuff is on our planet that's just not the best. And so because of you, I started getting in the sauna. I sweating more, finding ways finding things to put in my body to detoxify, bringing bitters into my life. Like that's another thing. So I know I'm getting
it
to
is.
the list, but I often tell you this, and I always wondered what you thought because Mason and I talk in passing here and there. We like say hi. Sometimes there'll be 2 years we don't talk, and then I'm like, hi. That little bit of time that we had, you've been with me since then. You made that much of an impression on me, and I just saw you as a guy that, like, had learned things I had not learned, and I did so not only was I doing the mushrooms, but before I was paralyzed for 6 years, during that period, I had a sauna at my house, and that was another thing you said. You said, "If I work privately," I think you used to private coach people on their health, and you said, "I require them to have a sauna because they need to sweat," you said it some way like that, but anyway, so it all coming full circle. I know that was a lot, but that's I think the 2 parts I wanted to explain is that,
Mm.
1, there was a health thing that happened in my family, and I had to be aware of what I was consuming, and then 2, you brought to my awareness, yes, you wanna eat clean because that's gonna help your system not have to work so hard, and you wanna put these herbs in you so that you can detoxify and you can, sweat it out. And that is what happened before I was paralyzed. So it's like I had that, and then, talk about you said something else, and then I'll bring it back to a question, but we have to be grateful for everything that comes in our life, and so just go backwards. If that didn't happen, I wouldn't have pushed myself to be aware of how to protect and take care of my family and have a healthy family. Wouldn't have maybe put me in the position that when I became paralyzed, that I would be in a way ready. Like if you're ever ready, I was not. It's not something I called in on that I think I did consciously. I did not, but subconsciously maybe. But it gave me a preparation to be who I am.
Uh,
You know?
can I jump in because I'm getting so many
Yeah,
things.
go
So
for it.
firstly, I appreciate it. I do remember being on the deck there and hearing the story, and I want to layer in some other things as I remember exactly the books I was referencing, and it's got some really fun elements to that conversation. And in terms of like, yeah, I remember like I was kind of telling my wife Tanya last night that I was doing this, and I was like, oh, talking to Steve, and yeah, we had a few conversations, and apparently it contributed a little bit, and this is what he went through for 6 years, and Tanya was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Oh, you look at like just did the whole like look at like this is so amazing when you get to help people and get that feedback. And I'm in such a cold mood. I'm like I love it. I've talked to you a lot about it, and I feel it. I'm like I feel real kindredship with you on that, and very grateful to be able to contribute, but Tani was like, "Let it in." Last night, I'm in a cold business mode at the moment, and I'm not letting there's as much of a fuzzy feeling as I probably should let in. I appreciate you saying it. And likewise, I think for you, and whether because I get an we've talked a lot. I've got a lot of insight into what you went through. But like, I think I've got like an hour and a half with you that I'm going to do in my show. Maybe we need to put the show note in the show notes because like what I want to like, I'm really fascinated, and I wanna go back to that, what I told you, and then and I'm grateful that it stuck with you, but then what's sticking for me is I'm like, I've been through a few really, like, gnarly things, and I do even though I do this, I don't try and pretend like, so naturally, I'm gonna be amazing in every situation where there's choices and so on and so forth, but you've gone through it, I'm really keen to, like, dive in. I think there's gonna be a lot of, like, highly reciprocal gold from just exactly pinpoint moments of where your decision making came from, when fear drove and then what that fear felt like it became and then what emerged. And that's such a presence that you have to go through. It's such a practical process that your mind and, maybe your spirit as well. But you talked about mind, and I think it's not a bad thing to be like, it's the mind is very practical. I can't wait to really go deep, 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 deep with you because I feel like there's something there that, again, is somewhat of a roadmap or even just acknowledging like this is where you'll hit the abyss and you're going to meet your maker and you're going to have to make decisions and you're going to not know whether there's going to be consequences. So I can't wait to dive into that and that with you.
Well, and I look for it, and we can definitely put a note to that show, and then I'm willing to be vulnerable and share my journey because I know it does help other people, just like you. That's why I think we connected so quickly because you were sharing your life with me, and I was sharing my life with you, and then that's how we help one another. So I think it's beautiful, and just well, I know this show might be eclectic because we're talking about so many passionate things, and we might have
Well,
to do more than one over
let
time.
let's go into the on the deck there. What I did
Yep.
bring up as well, I think I remember bringing up the book Wild Health by Cindy Angel. Gosh, I haven't referenced that book in so long. And it was kind of like, even these there's so many animals, there was like, like mob, like in like the Aboriginals here in Australia mob, they'd eat termite mounds because it was like a 50% clay. In the Amazon, there's like if there's a clay bed, you're gonna see the birds hoofing it to the clay because they're eating wild. They're eating, they're out there living in nature. Even there's like, no EMF to an extent. That no, no Wi-Fi to an extent back then anyway, maybe not with Starlink now. But
Yeah.
they're still needing to go and make sure that they're the part of life is keeping detox channels open. And you know what the other thing is? It's fun and necessary to eat toxins. It's not fun to be hyper dogmatic and have a perfect clean, like when I come to America, I want to go and see what the fuss is with In and Out Burger, and I want to go and have the filthiest burger that I can have, and I'm going to enjoy it. It's not to be purist, like, and then at the same time, when I'm here living my life, and the majority of the time, it's going to be hyper clean, and I'm going to be taking my detox supplements, and I'm going to be saunering, and I'm going to be exercising, I'm going to be doing breath work. But that's the nice thing about like having this mindset of if it, come in clean, saturate yourself with the good stuff, but remembering in order to develop and have a bit of fun as well and be cheeky and be a scallywag if you are one is you need to be able to take the Ferrari out, and taking the Ferrari out means you need to be able to walk into a city and not have all of those Wi-Fis absolutely annihilate you and be like, oh my god, I'm so sensitive that, and almost make that like an aspect of identity. I'm so sensitive to all this toxicity. I can't even have a slightest thing that isn't my diet. That's not robust enough. That's not resilient enough. That's not adaptable enough. And I'm not judging that. I was there for many years, and it's a nice part of it. And some constitutions are actually that sensitive as well. And then therefore that needs to be worked with
Yeah.
because that's like
And I did
everyone has.
have that when I first was going through this coming out. There were foods I would eat and, my feet would immediately start tingling, like, not immediately, like, within, like, 15, 20 minutes, and so I knew I was part of it was listening to my body, but I do know what you mean, like, because obviously I was in a massive healing, so I was more
It
sensitive
was
during that
very
period.
different. You need to be obsessive when you actually are sick. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just kinda talking about that, like, it's nice to get the 2 extremes because if you are in a place where you're starting to get really robust and healthy, it doesn't make sense to continue to have a prescriptive diet, which is hyper restrictive and a lifestyle that's hyper focused on whatever detoxification or, whatever, um, because that was for a sick person. At some point, you need to become well and you need to adjust. And also remember, there's still things I eat and I react. I don't eat them. I'm not saying do what you want, but I'd say it was such a night. I remember exactly having that conversation with you. And that was like, we were in very similar places there where it was time for us to hammer and change our lifestyle and really revolve around like getting ourselves back to harmony and maybe purging some very deep-seated toxicity embedded in our cells and our fat tissue, and then you kind of click over from your deep dive into and then you went into your healing process, and now on the other side of it, I'm super fascinated to see what kind of like lifestyle from you emerges in the future.
Yeah, me too, and I think just since we're talking about that, I have a picture of you because you went through such, our mind, we were working you went and shaved your beard off. I don't know if you remember that, and you didn't
Oh
even
yeah.
have a razor, so you're like, "Hey, do you have a razor?" Because I was clean shaved then, and then I gave you some razors, and you went and shaved your beard off, so I have a picture of you and me with you with no beard. It's the only time I think I've ever seen you without a beard.
And likewise, my now wife, we only just kind of like met up in Costa Rica just before that and decided we are going to be together. We weren't because we'd said a big goodbye when I left from Sydney Airport, and and then we decided she'd changed her trip. She came to Costa Rica. We kind of rekindled. We're like, yeah, we're going to spend life together. And then I got to Peru, and it was my birthday, and I shaved, and then I sent her a picture, and I think she questioned whether she wanted to be with me forever. At that point,
Well, that's it, so
she
you just
still
have the
gives me
beard.
so much shit for it. She brings it up, like, regularly, and, like, and I'm like and I haven't shaved my beard since.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's an amazing part to the story. Yeah, to be a part of that moment when you did do that. But I remember you weren't saying you were gonna be clean shaven, but you were like talking about that purge. You wanted to do something significant to show the transformation and like regrow your hair like in a new way and be, you know, step into your full life. It was a big transition. I remember you were like, I think I found the woman I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with. And it was that moment of your big life decision, and now you have, 3 kids, right? So
3 kids, a big business baby, a
yeah,
little American business baby.
yeah, it's so cool to see. I mean, this is what happens when you have friends for a lifetime. You get to see their journeys and, like, just have that excitement for each other. So, so speaking of that and this, because a lot of CEOs listen to this show, you know, those points, I mean, when you started this, did you know you were gonna grow a business, or were you thinking, like, this is gonna be small? Did you always have that vision, or did it just emerge over time?
Um, I think, like, from hearing this, like, I think everyone can see kind of the type of, like, CEO or entrepreneur I am, kind of like, more on the esoteric, like kind of a bit more kind of like, like macro spiritually driven, bit of Peter Pan syndrome, somewhat not artistic in the sense of actual skill, but an artistic edge. Like I like working with an invisible force and a muse, and I can sense when that muse is diminishing or growing. And so
I don't
no,
think I've
like,
ever heard someone say the Peter Pan syndrome. Does that mean just like wanting to be a little boy forever kinda thing? Is
yeah,
that
whoop,
what that
back to Neverland.
Yeah. Yeah. Just keep
Take me
dreaming
back to
and
the land of like pirates, lost boys, mermaids. Yeah,
yeah,
Tiger
magical
Lily
life.
Reef. Yeah, yeah, take me back to magical life, and that's why Hook. I think I've kind of like moved through this phase now, but for so long, like Hook, the Sim Spielberg Hook was just like that. I really needed that as a reference point, as like an archetypical journey to like, to leave Neverland, go, like become like learn the mundane, learn duty, kind of like that more like that karmic arm of life, or that, that dutiful aspect of life. Kind of like the Jing relationship to business and setting up of finances and structure. It has a very when I'm someone who's so focused on like the macro sense of freedom, like the cosmic freedom and the cosmic comprehension of what's going on, that's how I'm so driven. It was a hard path for me to like ground down into maintain that, maintain an aspect of myself that could relate to business and my organization through that lens. say through like a more of a cosmic, yeah, cosmic progression, perhaps a resolution of karmic energy, whatever that is. Still don't understand, but still keep on referring to it because it's a nice thing to grasp. It's a nice easy way to grasp what I'm talking about. But then like really come down to that, that layer of jing, and slow down and become disciplined enough, and set up an organization that was going to have, yeah, all the boring mundane things. And that's what happens in Hook, of course. Peter Panning um goes, marries, Wendy's whatever granddaughter, and then forgets and becomes a pirate himself, in mergers and acquisitions and so on and so forth, grows up and then has to go through that, like, believing in fairies again, so on and so forth. It's a nice, beautiful child's way of looking at it. But for me, very archetypically practical. I really relate to like that's how I maneuver through the world a lot of the time. I remember visually, I metaphors, and like that's. I got in trouble with university for being able to verbatim, rewrite like two economic lectures. There was going to be several lectures, and I wrote several essays, and then I verbatim essentially repeated the 2 and then they was like, when they randomly chose 2, and then they found my notes and they're like, "How did you do this? You how did you get them in and copy it?" And I was like, "No, no, no, I can show you." And I took them through and I said, "I imagine this paragraph like this, and this is the story, and this is what happens, and then this story." And I said, "Don't show it to me. I'll take you through it. This story, and then this story, and then this economic concept is represented by this beast that like it destroys this beast." And that's how and they were like, You're not allowed to do that," and they mashed it out of me. But that's how I operate, and so then you reintegrate with the magic. And so I've pretty much gone through that phase of maintaining the muse and the endearing elements of my Peter Pan syndrome through really capturing what I call the source essence of the business, and that source idea, and then um, going through that existential crisis of, like, what felt like my mission to begin with, and then deciding it was like a nice thing to go through to, like, maybe kind of essentially kind of like birth that off into allowing that essence to become Superfeast essence, and really feel that something was not becoming, it's not my mission anymore. It's a purpose, it's an evolutionary purpose of the organization. And I really don't feel charge around it, if I around the exact reasons that Superfeast existed. So I've captured the story in, like, I call it the Superfeast classic. I've captured the source essence in the classic, of exactly the moments that happened in my life and with me and Superfeast that gave the emergence. And now our content guides and our brand guidelines all derive from the sense of feeling. And I'll train the team, and I'm like, feel this story, and I'll give you, this is what happened when I was 14, and this is that kind of that start of that hero's journey for Superfeast emergence. And then feel that intent, and it's almost an agenda that the business has, but keep in awareness the end point of where you're trying to take this, and now derive an ad from that, or now derive a like every time someone's creating a piece or an article or a bit of creative, or we're just writing a big piece on ashwagandha, a really popular herb, and about why it was taken from down, like, why it was banned in Denmark, and what happens when there's like regulatory overreach that's led by fear of a chasm of competency around herbs. So they just ban it instead of allowing autonomy of people to, to gain their own understanding and wisdom of a herb if there is a gentle symptom that emerges, so on and so forth. So anyway, I'm like, you can't just I'm like, you can't, what's the intent behind this piece of writing? And then we go back to the classic, and I'm like, what? Well, it's a piece of intent. You're not coming up here and like just laying facts out. You're coming right down here to like this part of the classic, which was for me called the superhuman moment, creating superhumans, what that meant, and the kind of tribalism. I'm like, so you're talking to people who are in the know. You give them, you give them respect, you give them IQ respect, but you're giving them next layer coaching and mentorship and education around concepts that you've introduced, but maybe they've forgotten. So you're reminding, but you're talking to them in a continuum. And then my team member who hadn't really been with us for that long, it's like, I know exactly what you're talking about. And now I go to the content guide. I see this is where the content guide is. You can see this is examples of that happening, and so on and so forth. Took me a long time to do that. It's a 14-year-old business now, and it's only really been able to be captured in the last bits, because, they've caught waves of industry growth in 2015, and I was, and then we've grown from there, and I've had to be the one to go and maintain the essence, and I guess you'd say the integrity. Everyone we had business integrity, but integrity of the Taoist philosophy, the lineage, the naturalism, the nuance of the philosophy of this type of decentralized herbalism versus a clinical, say Chinese, clinical Chinese herbal application, or a naturopathic herbal application, or institutional herbalism versus decentralized herbalism. So much nuance, and so I was so enmeshed, and still that enmeshment of people going, you are like the soul of this business. And I feel like, to me, that's like saying that I am the soul of my son Leo or my daughter Aya. It's such an inappropriate thing to say, but it comes from someone who is perhaps still stuck within, like, what, like Ken Wilber's integrated model, like around the orange level, the orange spectrum of thinking, where you see this thing as a machine. You see organizations as a machine. They're only purpose driven, highly profit driven. The automation occurs in order to serve the Pope, or, like, distribution of authority only happens if you are serving the authority of the pinnacle and the prophet. And it's taken me a while to go back and sensibly integrate with the elements of that orange spectrum that I needed. Don't get me wrong, but I've had a lot of people in the organization who can't comprehend that an organization is like an organism and it has its own force. And so, like, if you've ever read the letter of Nick Cave to MTV, it really captures it well. He's like, "Thank you for nominating me, MTV." I'm gonna just go really quickly through this, but
Yeah.
my muse is like I would say, is kind of like like a horse, and she spooks easily, and I can't pin her up against other artists. And that encapsulates, there is a reality. A lot of people who are not better or worse, who are just like, maybe they enjoy commercial music production, and they would think that he's just saying that, like, kind of metaphorically, or he just doesn't feel like it, or maybe he's scared of going up against other people. But no, like, there is a real muse that his ideas, like, work in, where his ideas either come from or he creates ideas with. It's real, it's a force. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't necessarily have to be turned into a horse, or I don't have to say the business soul is like a child. They're just loose metaphors. There's something there. There is a thing. There is a source essence. There is a soul. And it's like, I don't even think it's a trippy thing, just because, I think it's such a highly real thing. I've met the most practical, analytical people. And when I go back and I go, like, so tell me why your dad created the company. And it's like, oh, this happened, so he created it. And I go, so he created it from this intention. And I'm like, where is that intention in your business? And they're like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I kind of feel that that's something the business really wants to do. And I think there's just been a lot piled on. It's not trippy. It's practical, ontologically. Why was the business created, and what were the moments and things that happened to the founder or founders, or the group or whatever that created it? That locks in. Whether you like it or not, that locks in. And if you move away from that, you're going to have what I call a weekend at Bernie business, where you're just going to say, we have a purpose statement, and you're going to have a reactionary purpose statement that's due to, like, your altruistic view, or you want to justify your existence. It's not going to be based on genuine intent that arose, not in an analytical, like a reaction, like a venomous spinning reaction at, like, for me, at, like, the state of degenerative disease, when an institution maintains and holds the ability to completely regulate the one interacts with their body or with medicine, and therefore caps their capacity to cultivate themselves and make mistakes around that, as well as also making incredible discoveries in what the resilience of their body, and preventing degeneration. And likewise, a, and again, this isn't like what holds. I'm telling you about the moment where I felt like I felt sick at looking around how many people who were old but not elders, and the fear that I wasn't going to be able to make that process, or that I was going to wake up one day and realize I hadn't engaged And I don't judge others. I'm saying I know I look at like my parents or grandparents and I think we're, lots of people around us, ones that who like, seemingly didn't land there. And I just think, well, what chance did you have? Like, look at the look at the environment that you're in. Like you did the best you could. I'm so on that state of things. But that was actually what happened that led to the creation of Superfeast. So that's like that belongs in the source essence. I don't go putting that on that level of venom, and then there's also very fluffy ones in the source essence, don't get me wrong. But that sense and feeling is so real to me when I feel it, and I've now given that to Superfeast. So it washes off me, and I feel it when I go in and steward my role, and my team comes in and stewards the role. They can feel when they're like their personal things are getting in the way of them actually respecting and honoring that ontological reality of where Superfeast came from. And that's why the evolutionary purpose is around dramatically lowering disease and degeneration, and supporting people to enter into the realm of elderhood. It's a nice statement. That's a top statement. The root crop is what everyone forgets to capture. That's where everything emerges from, the root crop. Everything above the ground, the purpose statement, why we do it, how we do it, what we do. Like that's all stuff I do and give, but under there there's the business's own soul. So that's how I've approached business. And now I feel like I'm doing it very practically. As I said, I think this is a very practical exercise. I've talked to so many people that once I go into like, show me what started at this, started here,
Yeah.
why this, why that. And all of a sudden, their strategic decision becomes not based on what they think or what they're into right now or what they're feeling guilty about or what they've been psyoped by. It's not about like saving the planet because they're and saving it in one way if they're a left leaning person and one way if they're a right leaning person and going and using their organization's essence, which isn't theirs. It's the organization's blood and chi in order to go and save the planet in some way. No, go back to the root crop. You go and you ask questions. What happened? This, and you tap back into the feeling, and you tap back into the intention. You tap back into the muse, and you go, oh well, clearly, the best thing if I love this thing and steward this thing the way that I would a child. I want to interpret why, like how my children, like you do, this is what I feel is going to be greatest for my children. Sometimes it means a strict leadership and moving something in a direction, and especially if they're younger, and others just like stewardship in another way and just a holding a space. And it's the same with business. And so, a strategic decision, a differentiation strategy, perhaps not super logical now, but in the long term is like the ultimate, like, decision that seemed like a romantic thing. And in the future, people go, you vertically integrating in that way did not make any sense to me 3 years ago. Look at you now. Look how solid you've ridden out that economic turmoil. I really think that's like that is where as you can see, like I'm very, very passionate about that side of business and that aspect of business and Superfeast. I'm really looking forward to creating new businesses and maybe doing it in a way there's a bit more grace and flow in the way that I, I go through my separation with like my personal identity and the soul of the company.
Which also
And
brings point to the whole idea of, like, the soul, because even I think of that when I came out of being paralyzed, definitely doing things in a slower manner, and that's even why I have, like, turtles, in my on my desk, and I even wear them around my neck, because I'm telling myself to slow down. Growing up in Silicon Valley, everything was fast, and I did think in my mind after I took my sabbatical and I started to come back to work, maybe I just get a few consulting clients and I chill. But then something inside me said, no, 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 no. Like you have this mission, like you're doing this thing. And that's where my company it has its own life. It's like, no, 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 this is already, and it's kind of like a child, too. Like now that my kids are older, it's like, oh, I thought you were going to do this or that, but I don't dictate that. It's their life. I'm just there to, you know, care, keep them alive, do the basics, but they're their own entity, as you're saying. I'm not them. They are themselves. I influenced them, I hope, in good ways, right? Did I influence them in bad ways? Maybe because, I'm not perfect either. I've definitely did things I would do differently as I've gotten older. But the point I wanted to make is that you're right. The company is its own entity. And, while we're here and alive in this body, we are maybe part of stewarding it, but we also have other people as it grows, and this is not just you, like, there's massive documentation on this, like
Yeah.
with Jim Collins is an example with Built to Last. I think that's the biggest study. I think it was pretty much the whole 80s, like 8 to 10 years, they studied businesses that made it over 100 years, and exactly the essence of what you're saying was their conclusion that the businesses that kept the core, but allowed everything else to change. So it was basically extreme rock of what the core purpose is, with extreme flexibility to take this core purpose and change and morph with times, is what allowed those things to happen. And that's essentially what we're talking about. And that's like even human, like, here I am, I'm Steve, but I went through this major paralyzation. I had to have extreme flexibility to live my life in a different way, but I'm still being me, I guess, as an example. And then also back to the business side, it's in a way that, I guess, this is kind of crazy to say. I don't know if I've said it this way before, but it's like the business kind of chose me as well as I chose the business. And it wasn't just this one sidedness, like I'm the fire hose, I'm creating this. No, it was like co created, and I might have incepted a lot of these concepts, but did I? Like, where did it really come from? It's a collective of all this consciousness to make this. So I can totally see what you're saying, and it's quite beautiful. I guess, where were is there a specific point where, I like to look at that moment where, if there was any difficult transformation, like, if you look like you're going into cocoon. So was there a point when you started to build this that you're like, "Oh, is this gonna work, or can I do this?" And then you came out the other side, like the birth of the butterfly. Is there any, like, turning point moment that made this all stick? Because it feels now like there's a trajectory. I'm not saying it's gonna be
Yeah.
perfect, there's gonna
No.
be bumps, we all know that, but you are on this trajectory. Was there a moment that, like, really solidified?
Yeah, so okay, so we met 4 years into Superfeast. So at that point, I'd, no plan, yet I was, very well, I like, like objectively sucked, but, very beneficial for the long-term journey. Like, 6 months in, my mum had an aneurysm. She became permanently disabled, highly, like, high TBI, so, like, highly, like, brain damaged and needing 24-hour care. So without that, I don't think Superfeast would exist, because that was the dutiful, like, I'm still kind of like there, like core reason of Superfeast existing is because I need to, that's like in order to her to maintain and dignity and continued growth. Like, she was kept alive, for when we decided to pull the plug, kept alive, and so that was it. Decision out of our hand, but she's alive, and she's like, now I'm have to have her have a state of like a life that where she can continue to develop and not just be an existence of a shell and have dignity and so on and so forth. So without that, I don't think I would have had that practical drive that, acknowledged financial realities and scalable structures. But it did take me a long time. But what I did do at the start, then is and I think it's becoming something which, like, thankfully is like really emerging in the entrepreneurial space. It's like, not don't it's not about you and your dream. It's not about you and your, like, your life purpose. It's just like, especially, if you can if there's like a mix and a few your purpose, which is whatever's emerging purpose. What is my purpose, God? I don't know, like, or my dreams or whatever it is. If there's like just a spark, a connection between mine and the emerging organizations, then that's all you need is a spark. That's such a blessing if you have that. However, it was like, I was like, "What am I good at?" I'm like, "I'm good at, like, I'm I'm charismatic. I'm good at taking complex concepts and communicating them very passionately, and I can do it to people who are, like, say, like, hyper, who like hyper spiritualized language, and I can also and adjust very very quickly, and also spend enough time retaining, say, like a scientific context or like clinical context. So I was very chameleon like in that sense. And so I identified that pretty early. And so I was like, sick. I have no idea. Like, I still haven't really reconciled anything in my business myself ever. Just so you know, I always like, I've never actually sat down and done, like, there's still aspects of like basic P&L analysis where we get there and we sit and I'm like, or like, finance, and I'm like, "Ugh," and I'm sit down, I'm like, I'm sorry guys. And now it's like the fourth month. Like, what's MAT again? In the when we're looking at I like it's like, and it happens a lot. But I knew what I was good at, so I just went and I went ham, doubled down on it, and naturally, just as I could, brought on like people in like in bookkeeping and admin as I went along. But I went to the markets and I just started talking and talking and talking, and I kept studying what was not just relevant, not what's relevant to me. I've kept studied herbalism and mushrooms and to an extent business that I in a way that was relevant to the business. And I studied like reinventing organization, you know. Jim Collins' work, yeah, Buckminster Fuller kind of style of organizing. I'm like that kept me interested enough, and I was like, right, I'm good at looking at things metaphorically. I'm good at looking at organization like an ecosystem. I can apply this. I can work with an analogy of a permaculture garden, or right now my department's work is like the organ systems of the Tao of the human body, like the element systems. I'm like, I
And I bet we could do a whole podcast on that. I don't wanna dive down there because I know I've had that conversation with you, and I would say let's bookmark that for another one because it is so cool how you created the organs of a human's
oh yeah,
anatomy into your business.
it's been
So
fun and it's
shout out
been
to bookmark that.
and look and where the existentialism has had is the times when I've taken that tool and kind of related to it a little too literally rather than practically in a way that is like again scalable, or something that is like if I have someone like when I have an executive hire in my business, that it's beyond comprehension of like a genuine organizational structure that's something that they can work with, and they understand where the lines of report goes, so on and so forth, where authority to make a decision actually is distributed to, so on and so forth. And so after I was fortunate enough that I was doing just like I was just riding off my ability to talk and convey, and over those 5 years, like just as I got back, probably like 6 months after I got back from our trip, or maybe yeah, no, that's 2015. Was it 2015 or 14?
It was 15 June
It was
when I met
15.
you.
Yeah, it was June 15. It happened really fast after that. Um, that Tani and I, yeah, we got pregnant. And when by the time in 2016 when she moved up, I was, yeah, that's right. It was 16. I'd really driven the company forward just accidentally, and all of a sudden, that people started going, "Oh, that mushroom thing!" It started to boom in the States a little bit, and I was just very fortunate that I was positioned in a way that I've been talking about these mushrooms and these adaptogens for years now. And likewise, not just talking about the product, but I was talking about the philosophy that drove it. And I was doing that at markets, and I was just known. I'm still known. I still go. I'm on the shopping network, weirdly, in Sydney now. And a lot of the people who host that TV shopping kind of like hour of, you can buy this Jing double. They're like, oh, I used to come to your stall across the road 10 years ago when you were there at the markets, because that's where we were. It's still like I'm still known as a part of the fabric of that. And off the back of that, I had this trust, and stores just started calling. At that point, because I still had an excess of that Peter Pan syndrome. Everything is going to work out. I don't need to necessarily have that discipline about watching my finances. I really just trust this person. I really get a good vibe about this person. I did have someone in the business who, whether it was incompetence or conscientiously, money was being used for their personal life. There was like attempts to like, change over bookkeeping to kind of like sweep things under the table, kind of got caught. Like all of a sudden finding like tax debts that hadn't been dealt with when I delegated that kind of thing. And so really kind of came into this place where when we'd had like a good connection, like a kind of like a, good deep friend connection as well. And so had to go through my first like, right, we're going to remove. I thought there was like talks of me just kind of like handing over percentages of the company back then, because I was just really trying to run away from like, come and save me, classic E-myth, kind of like, here, take it, save me. You will do this, and a hyper amount of faith in something that didn't deserve it. And that person, and likewise, I've learned not just then, it's happened to me like again with the whole team. It was not their fault, to the extent I also think I will leave a little bit of the responsibility on them. They should have known and given feedback that they weren't able to handle what was being given to them. But the majority of the responsibility was me not recognizing that this is someone who did not deserve or have capacity for the responsibility that was been handed to them. And there's a little bit of like, you can do it, I can help you and I can mentor you because I see you for what you can do, and even if you can't. And sometimes that, as you know, is hyper excessive and inappropriate. And sometimes it should be like, oh no, you can't do it. That should be said. But anyway, so I had to break up with this person. Turns out, like the shares hadn't moved over, so I still owned 100% of the company. It was an absolute miracle.
Wow.
We're gonna sue you. Didn't happen. Still had them come and still like damage the business, and try and go for reputational things at the same time. Like, one of my mentors in the health space turned out to be an absolute loon, and I feel like I'd based a lot of my identity on them, and had another like real key leader in my community who I kind of really saw as like a big brother figure, who'd kind of like taken the bullshit bait from my ex-partner, and they were like, he did this and that, and they were like, my God, that's awful. Like, you're out of the community. I was having this mad existential crisis. We were pregnant with baby. So that was hard. That was very hard. That was like kind of probably the closest I've been to depression, and had to take the everything back to the business in a garage. It's 2000. Yeah, this is the end of 2015, in a garage. Packing all the herbs myself. Tani came into the business, helped me like whip up some bookkeeping and got a website going, and then it took us a while to rebuild. And then all of a sudden, because like we just got the website going, able to like, we found emails that had just been created, put on the website and abandoned, and there were emails with like sales, requests and things like that. And so then once we kind of got that going, it started 2016, things started like really clicking, and we started moving up, and then built out a whole team. Kind of same tendency I have, because I'm a bloody, altruistic, everything's going to be fine hippie that was like scared of really integrating any of those beautiful aspects of that orange spectrum of hierarchical business, which is like, being able to actually judge things by their merit, and distribute not just authority but measurements of what output was going, and also allowing there to be a centralized power to an extent that they were accountable to, and not just that flat structure of like, we're all family, that I kind of had. And so promoted lots of people, bloated team, promoted lots of people that shouldn't been promoted, didn't hold people accountable. We were growing enough, very, very lucky. Like some businesses, other businesses don't have it can be a gift and can be a curse. Like, you're growing and there's enough cash coming through without any real need for sales, because you're riding, a reputation foundation, and also a market growth, and you happen to be well positioned and first to market. So I didn't really have to, had a team that just like didn't have to worry about sales or business development, or, the creation of assets that capture what was in my head that I needed to get out. And then when I started to go, now we're going to start moving, and I'm going to get everything out of my head. We're all going to create assets. We're going to create accountability. We're going to create systems for a way to scale that. Full blown, like, oh, why are you doing this? You're changing. Had to go through like that was really hard. Like, Tani was out of the business at this point, and I had to go through like like 90% of the people were like, oh yeah, no, I can see, like, as you said, you're kind of like taking the pirate ship out to sea. I don't want to be a pirate. I'm going to leave. Let's do like a 3-month offboarding. But there was like one especially, who just like really went after the behind the scenes gossipy jugular, and I was really susceptible to it. I had to go to bloody therapy and make sure I was really working on my mummy daddy issues, because I was too susceptible, and I think every entrepreneur does. Otherwise, you are either too cut off from sensing and being able to empathize and, be connected to people, or you're too open, like where I was. And so did that, went through that process. It was very good. Kind of like, okay, finished that process, got people out the business, lots of people out of the business. Only one was like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this, and you're like, completely selling out. It's like, cool, out, try and sue, didn't work. Judge was like, you're delusional. You've had it the best workplace ever. Get out of here, like, and then bringing on a whole new team. And that's where I'm at now. I'm feeling pretty relieved at the moment. It took a lot. I got like a lot more, I really kind of like had to actually like sacrifice some jing. I had to put some like stake, that was like, I was talking to my therapist. I was like, I'm a bit overweight here. I just can't get motivated. And there's grays. And he's like, maybe you bloody need them, mate. Maybe you need to actually know. You
Yeah.
don't just get to like magically have everything work. You need to like go for it, like put some skin in the game. And I feel like I've definitely kind of coming out on the other side of that. Like our flywheels are really spinning. Everyone is so like it took me a long time to create a recruitment capacity where I'm like, you have to be able to work with me in feeling this invisible muse that I'm talking about. But I also really need you to be able to um I really need you to be able to also remain implementing and uh hang on, I'm just like seeing that I've got like a trying to reconnect, make sure you have a stable internet connection, which I think I do. Can you still hear me, Sue?
I can. Yeah, way back at the beginning, there was a slight interruption, but then it caught up. So this you're actually speaking clearly while you're
Okay,
talking.
cool. All right, we'll go. Like it's gone away now. So while also making sure that they had the ability to like really like challenge me in a way that was ontologically correct for the business and in a way that was going to actually help us to integrate or implement everything I'm talking about through a system which grows the business. And that's been I've found it super difficult. I've been at times highly resentful at the process and done a lot of like I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this, like I've done the whole like I wish I didn't like why did, why did this am I doing this? Am I sacrificing my life because my mum became disabled and I'm trying to find a way to like, get her healthy and yes, I love these herbs, but like why am I, am I giving my life for building a business like another year, another year, another year? Like I love these herbs and mushrooms, but do I love them this much? I've gone through all of that kind of stuff and kind of really landing in a place where I'm like it's not like I'm grateful or not grateful. I feel like I'm like, yeah, that was like I'm feeling really like long-term good. Like I'm feeling really happy with like the knowledge I've acquired and the around business and around creating organization. I've got a really, I think, a solid philosophy. I still maintain my same desire for like freedom, but I can really see that roadmap in terms like I'm gonna really like really do my duty that I feel I have and that I'm karmically like I've got a karmic duty to it. Even if I went off and started living in a cave now, I wouldn't stop being able to think obviously about the things that, around my mom and naturally my kids, I'm not going to go and run away from them, but I've
Yeah,
got that duty to them. And that's got a financial one, that's got a philosophy kind of based one. I need to understand how I philosophically relate to industry and organizations. I feel like I'm really developing that. And I've got a real nice, I think I got a real nice long plan for practical vertical integration, structures, what's got left, and then likewise compounding to go beyond, to go beyond needing that salary from the company. I've really got like a time where that hits, and then I can see that next layer, kind of the chi layer, as I put it in the treasures, the jing layers, that duty one, then the chi layer of like really thinking about like, just fun lifestyle, everything that's needed, everything I want my kids to have, my family to have, everything I want to be able to give to my friends, that's I've got like a very quick cap for me in terms of how much money and time and space I need for that. And then comes the one that I'm like really kind of going for is just that life that, maintains my duty, maintains that like that lifestyle and that movement and animation through life and enjoying myself and, not enjoying myself in that level, but then really being free to go and like follow my nose in terms of what my practice is of comprehension of what's going on in this universe, my personal comprehension of like the universe purpose, what moves I make on that layer of Shen. So yeah, I think it's been worth it. If it's like sometimes, you know what it's like, you're in the middle of it and you're like, Jesus, this is like hardcore, like blood pact I've made with for this life. I didn't think it was going to be this hard. I didn't think it was going to be this harrowing at times. I didn't think it was going to be this challenging. Um, going, really, I have nothing to complain about. But like at the same time, there's like it feels so real internally, like
yeah,
going through all of that, and then likewise, not going like not going really low when that happens and staying level. And then sometimes how those highs can be just as damaging if you go and follow it and you don't stay centered and you go too high and you miss that, staying level by really enjoying,
yeah,
acknowledging, and like,
yeah,
just like celebrating the profit or the payout or and then not going too hard. Yeah, well, back cool, great, bring back into harmony because both of those extremes can be so damaging. And I'm like, how many more years have I got to run a bloody company?
yeah.
Do
Well,
this, but
you have so many ups and downs, and each growth has new stretching and new challenges. And I guess 2 thoughts come to me in all of that, and it's, you know, there is this linear sense that you've been able to take us on through your story. In those, and I don't know if it's like one moment or maybe even just sharing from now, like with all your growth and all your knowledge, I'm just thinking of the audience because, we talk a lot about how do you grow a healthy business while leading a healthy life. And I think that's why I think it's special that we're having this conversation because you're in this health space and what we feed our body. So I guess I have 2 thoughts and we can go one at a time, but like, and maybe as a suggestion, like that you would see. So anyone that's listening, how do you do all these hard things and still be a father, still be a partner, like, having that symbiosis in it. And then also and we can do this one at a time if you want, but then the other one is how do the supplements help you, like bringing those herbs into your life so that you can keep this energy to keep doing what you're doing. So I guess I'm just looking at that. How do you integrate this health and wellness into your family life?
Yeah, I mean, like, how you do it, I mean, like, with the kids, I mean, as you mean, you'd remember, perhaps the biggest sign of, like, sometimes for me, getting home and just not being exhausted is, like, a success, has been a success, but, like, that's not exhaustion is like in the Tao, you say like you can be tired but not exhausted. So the whole my measurement at the moment is like it's on a chi layer of the body, the vitality, the animating layer, which allows me to change gears into different, little dimensions and different ways of being. Now the biggest one for me is going from like strategy and stewardship and facilitation of these things into home, which is the classic like changing from work to home is like such a huge challenge at times, but that's my barometer at the moment of whether I can like really lose myself. Like, and sometimes I actually can't, and I've communicated that with the kids and with Tani as well. But like, I'm on a a good thread at the moment. That's my, I can get home and I change into the actual bus driver that goes and gets the gorilla cart and goes up to the bus stop, and the kids jump in, and I lose myself, and we go, let's go to Fruit World, and we go to our little orchard, and we go through the fruits, and I lose myself. I'm not doing it and while thinking about business like that's
Does that just
I
automatically, I know I'm jumping in, does that automatically happen, or do you have to focus your mind to make that transition possible?
I mean it depends, as like, we ask these questions and like so I'm looking at it like over like say the last like, Leo's 2, nearly 3, Aya's 8, and Hugo's 6 months. And so like when it was with Aya and it was just a little girl games, I found it much easier to do it and it would just happen really naturally because like but like with a boy and now she's 8. um yeah, probably like so 2 weeks ago in this round, I was like really having to work it hard. I was like, "Come on, Mason, you can do this. You don't." I've had a week of like not engaging and like been like, "No, not getting on the trampoline. I'm going to stay an adult. I'm not going to come into the play space. I'll kick a football or something." I've literally said that. I'm like, "All right." Now, like 2 weeks ago, I'm like, "No," I'm like thinking, "It can't. Come on, don't get lazy and just this is going to bite you on the ass later." Um, because you can't be a leader if you can't get down. If I'm going to be a leader of a parent and I'm actually going to steward these kids, and I expect to like be able to like give them instructions and stuff. Unless I'm down in their world playing, you don't earn the right to like really lead them. So yeah, 2 weeks ago I had to really work it for a couple of days, and
What
now I've
and
just
my one interjection on that, and I'll like, but my younger brother, he loved video games. You know, he was more 80. I mean, I'm kind of 70s, 80s child, but he was literally like video games a big thing right when he was getting old enough to play them, and so he was all into that, and I didn't. I wanted to be outside, and then my son was huge in video games, and I had to play to be with him, and so I remember texting my brother. I'm like, "Look, I beat that game that you always made fun of me that I couldn't play," and so I got to have this additional relationship with my brother because I finally played a game. But it was the force of what you're saying is like I knew if I wanted to connect with my son, I had to do what he was doing. So I get that. You have to,
mm.
it's almost like a rapport thing as well. Like you're literally becoming in rapport with them and you have to be a child. You have to
Oh, and
go, and that's your Peter Pan thing, right? You gotta like give yourself permission to be Peter Pan, brother.
Yeah, well, it doesn't take long. Like, I'm coming out of a pretty, like, highly stressful couple of years. So I think this is why, like, I'm just really reestablishing this over the last few months. But of course, after like, after a little bit, it's like, all right, that starts becoming like a haven. It's like, oh God, yes, thank goodness that I'm like last night, like this Monday, Tuesday, been perhaps in a nice way, some of the most like intense. I've had like real like good productive like blow ups with and what blow up what blow ups are. I don't know. It's not just an Aussie thing, is it? Like little like little heightened real high energy like blow ups with team like me and a team member in front of everybody, and then you know like communicating, like following the thread of it. This is actually like, what are we both talking about the same thing? What are we trying to create here? What's the tension thread that we're trying to go hugs, show everyone, hey, yeah, no, all good now. It's been a massive week. So, but because I had momentum, I'm getting home now and I'm like, bang, straight back, yesterday going to Fruit World and was just like, now, and just like that. And I found that like hyper energizing. So sometimes I'm in good spaces with it. Sometimes it's like really difficult. Sometimes I'm that part with the kids or with my wife is or my mates even is easier than the getting into the workspace. It's all a big fluctuation. It's a never ending tending to a fire, but that's probably the biggest thing I've had to focus on. And then in terms of everything else, I'm always, either, I don't have too many breaks, but like I'm always having either, sometimes a small amount of like just maintaining a mushroom or I'm saturating my body, which is at the moment, I'm like, for me, the tonic herbs in this type of like environment, like I'm taking chi herbs a lot at the moment just because we're coming into autumn. It's a lung tonic and we're in late summer as well. It's real spleen tonic, so sweaty, hot. I'm taking heaps of chi tonics and I'm taking actually now a lot of like Mason's mushrooms, or I'm taking the Mason's mushrooms capsules just because I don't even have to think about it anymore. There's like intuition and I just know bang, 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 bang. But I also know with how much like there's like a lot of time pressure kind of coming in at the moment. There should be a lot of urgencies and slowing down of pace as well. But I'm feeling a lot of urgency around what's going on in the world and moving and positioning my business in the right place. So I'm hammering the herbs and I'm saturating my body in them, as well as I have a few other little supplements that I take that I like getting the edge. But likewise, saunas. I had a sauna this morning. At the moment, I'm not really too keen on going and doing like heaps of like stuff, at the gym or with a PT or anything like that. So I just go and jump on my Bellicon rebounder to keep that's like my little hack to keep my body physically really rocking. And then I just layer that in. We've got like a nice like lighthouse walk that I'll go. And if I need to listen to, I like getting out in the middle of the day as well and doing some activity. But likewise, if I'm, if I need to listen to something, I'll go and go for a walk. Otherwise, I'll just go to the pool and just do half an hour of laps, and that's been really nice for me. And of course, I've got my Taoist practice, and that's probably the top thing that's keeping me really level-headed. It's
Yeah.
not lots of whiz bang, kind of like qigong, not the layer of what we call mingong, but qigong shingong, which is when you do enough of collecting of original energy of the universe, and then the whole practice is either in standing or sitting for long periods and just practicing in comprehending the original essence or the original intention of the universe or of nature, and just like really continuing to comprehend and then muse with that. And that's probably the main thing that's keeping me really level headed. I love spring water. You love water. I love
Yes.
collecting my wild spring water if I can. Otherwise, I've got beautiful person here who comes and delivers spring water, which is always
The
a
sources have improved since we met. I think more people are being conscious of that and being hydrated. I saw something, and I don't know where I saw it, but they were talking about how some people are looking younger at certain ages now, and they say that, in the last, like, 50 years, the consciousness of hydration has played a part in that, just
man, it
skin,
is
you
it's
know?
so good, and you can just bypass the whole like, I agree, it's like, there's a lot of water supplements and a water technologies, and there's a lot of alkaline stuff and all acidity stuff and blah, blah, and this type of thing that drops and allows the water to be more accessible. All of those things are good, especially in instances of, like, clinical or if someone's sick and they need, like, an intervention or a
Yeah.
particular disease state. But if you just fast forward to like high quality spring water and you just get onto that, and you do that long term. And every now and then you go and find a wild spring and go and collect your water and just like smash a bunch of water coming straight out of the earth. That's where you're going to end up for. So like, yeah, as you know, that's such a
Yeah.
hydration is such a beautiful piece.
I just realized something in our conversation. So the black label on your products, those are your blends, and then if it's got the off-white or the yellow, that those are just the pure herb. Is that how that
Yeah,
is that why they're labeled black?
you crack the system. That's the quarter.
I
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know if you ever documented that, but I just you were saying all the ones that you mixed, and I was like, "Oh, those are all the black label ones." It just clicked in my head. So, I know that's a weird thing to pop, into the conversation, but,
oh, it's good
so
now.
those are all the blends.
I mean, except for the capsules, we kept all the capsule labels black for some reason. These are the things, you know what it's like when you're in business this long. Sometimes and I've been going back and I've been telling everyone for the last 2 years. Now we're building, but for the last 2 years with this new team, I'm like, everything's there, and you just got to excavate. And when you hit an assumption, you got to go smashing beyond that, beyond that assumption. And like that, I had a whole year because my Superfeast years, which is like essentially like the lunar years. So it's like kind of we start them like a little bit after lunar year, but like late Feb, have a theme. And so we're now in a theme. We've got a year of wood. So wood pirates, wooden pirates. So that's the wooden element and everything that
Yeah,
comes with it, growth and
yeah.
everything. But like we've last year was a year of water, clarity, interconnectedness, baseline wisdom capture, sage essence. Before that was metal. And it was just like coming in and just cutting everything and taking everything that was already built, just smelting it down, was melting everything down to its core. And if we had to build it all back the same shape, then so be it. But most of the time, we were just going to be like cutting and
Wow.
reimagining everything. And that's just one I realized I'd never really thought about, why I didn't keep the white theme going when there's a single herb within the capsules, and the capsule bottle's changing soon, by the way. I'm looking forward to showing it to you. It's going to be a little bit more obvious. It's a capsule bottle, a bit lighter as well. Why isn't it white? I need to really think about that because we're just redesigning right now.
Well, maybe I brought something up that hit a nerve. Well, this has been so beautiful, and I know you and I could fill up multiple podcasts. I think, what's coming to me, if we're talking about so many things from business, the ups and downs of it, the people that are listening are in these same realms, and we're trying to be a human, live a good life, while bringing some good product or service onto the planet. If people are hearing this on the health side, where do you see? Do you ever have like? I know it's different for everyone, but is there like a spot to start? Like, I mean, is it with
With Superfoods.
I don't it's so hard. I don't know know, 'cause is it water? Is it the
Okay.
sauna? Like, I mean, if someone's starting, I mean, there's so many places. So even as I ask this question, it's probably not a good question, but
Oh, no, I think
I
it's a good question. I mean, I think
yeah, where
everyone
do you
listening
start if someone's just
listening's
hearing
ever
this and they're like, "I've been working, I'm stressed out," because so many people that come to More Business, More Life,
okay.
they built something amazing, they don't know how to care for themselves anymore, if that makes sense. They got a treadmill up to 10, they're running, and they don't know how to get off the treadmill safely and keep their business alive, and a lot of that comes back to our own nurturing, and so I guess where for you, with all your knowledge, and to kinda, like, close out this episode a little bit, what would be the thing you would say to that person? Where do they start? Because we talked about a lot of big things today. So
Yeah, I mean, like, kind of like, it's similar to when I was saying when I got started with Superfeast. If I was like, "Oh my god, where do I start with this business?" And I was like, "What have I already got?" And I've already had like I had the Chatterbox energy, I had Scallywag energy, I had like, "Hey, I'm a decentralized jester. Like, come over here and look at me and let me then bang hit you with it." I was like, "All right, I've already got that. I talk about it all the time. I've already reinvented my life several times. Let me represent transformation, reinvention." So I was like, "I'm just gonna do that." And so with what you're doing right now, so I didn't actually feel like I was starting from scratch. So same, whatever you're doing, the easiest, the lowest hanging fruit, the easiest way for you to stack it, stack the new thing in, and that if that is, say within the herb world, if it's like, if you are taking capsules already and you're just going to be able to like, don't try and buy the powder then unless you really want to and put the powdered extract like you into your tonics.
Mason, I love all the things we've covered, and I think you and I could fill up I don't know, a dozen podcasts with all of our stories, and I think, we definitely looked at the ups and downs of your business and staying true to your core, which is so beautiful, but then also how you bring your products into health and well-being, and I guess I'm just really curious for those listeners that are just still running that treadmill at 10, building a business that they care about and they don't want it to die and they're afraid of getting off, they're just on this perpetual like race to keep it going. As you and I both have felt in our businesses, what would you suggest is like that first thing? Like, and it could be anything like in a business tactic or in, the herbs that you bring into your life. What would be the area or the thought that you would, if someone just had one thing to try to start to bring new life into themselves and their business?
Yeah, I definitely have a business perspective on that, and then I'll get to the herbs, which will be a much easier one. But I mean, in business, kind of, I guess there's gonna be an oscillation, especially between two phases as you go along the decades of being a business owner, and there's gonna be phases where it's gonna be appropriate for you to like full on double down on those natural skills you have that are just like exponential if you only focus on those in the growth that you bring. And then there's going to be those other phases when you're working on the refinement of other aspects of your business that require your intention to put essence into. You're going to need a team to help you implement, but maybe you're going to have to take the foot off the gas of you just being able to do what you want in your skill. But when you do that, roadmap it back to what the next evolution of you sitting back in that seat of just like doubling down on what is your natural strength. That is really important to realize that it's not going to look the same, from when I started those first 5 years. It didn't when I got back to doing that, when I started going on a national and international tours and going on the podcast. It didn't look the same, but it had the same flavor. So just be ready for that upgrade, and don't move away from that, and don't get lost in the, oh, well, I better just grow up and just realize that now my life is all of this boring stuff. Like, do it, do what you can to survive it and survive it well and not get exhausted, and then roadmap yourself back to where you're in your sweet spot. And then from the herbs, I mean, what I was mentioning before in terms of what I'm doing, like when I just have zero energy to do any of my exercise or anything, I rebound. It sits there. I have conversations annoyingly with people, and I rebound on my little mini trampoline, and that works. I have a sauna here, and it's a real staple for me. And when I can't think about choosing any herbs, I've got my Mason's mushrooms and my Jing powders, and I just whack them into a tonic, and I just saturate my body in them. If you're someone who's just like, you're already doing like something like taking capsules, just get like the mushroom mate capsules and the Jing capsules and just put like more than the label dose. Put 4, 6, 8, doesn't matter, but saturate your body in them, and just experience what it's like throwing like, just throw throw everything at it randomly at the dartboard.
Mason, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your ups and downs, being vulnerable with us today. And I hope those of you listening are gaining some insight into more business and more life. And I'm curious, we're listening. If you're on our newsletter, then please email us. We really read these things. Let us know what you learned from this and what questions you have, because I'm sure Mason and I are going to have another episode because there's so much more to talk about. So please put those questions in so that we can actually answer what you want. And if you're not on our newsletter, then all you have to do is text wow, WOW, to 72,000 72000, and you'll be prompted to add yourself on our newsletter, or you can go to stevenapolitan.com and add yourself onto the newsletter. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, remember, choose gratitude and create freedom. Thanks for being on the show, Mason.
Thank you. See you, everybody.